HTML here to see what I did to add this, because you'll probably want to know like what happened. So here, inside the HTML, all I did was, this is the container with the Pokemon logo, right, which matches up to this thing. And then I just jammed in a form. That's all I did. Looks pretty similar. Who's like really glad to be outside of like Rails, Form 4, form tag hell, right? Great, we're just vanilla HTML now. Question?
No, we're just not.
Oh, okay. Form 4, oh! Should you know how to use forms using create element? Yes. Both. You should know how to build forms. I believe during the events lecture, you should have gotten like how to append something to the DOM. Right? Like how do you add something to the DOM? You create an element, you add the inner text, you grab that node, and then literally put append child. There is a better way. Did Mike show you string templating? Okay. If you're still confused about that, we will have some more experience about it with it tomorrow and through the labs. But if you need help with it, it is so crucial to understand how to add things to the DOM, either with this create element or with string templating. Cool? So all I did was, this form exists on the page. I have a label, type text, name is name, and the value is empty. Why is this name attribute important? It is. Is it? Here, let's check something out here. Boop. Cool. So, if you remember, all right, the name attribute will always be the key that comes across in the params. All right? So if I submit this form, what I can expect to see on the params on like the Rails end, do you remember doing this? If I were to change, no? Oh, okay. Someone said no. If I were to change this to, this is the key, when I check my params, I'm going to see this is the key. And what is the value for that? Whatever I entered into this input field, and then I hit submit, right? Whatever winds up being in here, the value. Does that make sense? Cool. So I have a name, a front image, and a back image, and that's it. Are there any questions as to like what these input fields are? Pretty simple, right? So what I want to do is I want to be able to create a brand new image. Like after Mew, I want to create a new Pokemon and add it to the screen. Cool? Let's take a look at the code so we understand how our app currently is as I've refactored it, so we understand what's going on, and then we can add to it. This is very common to expect of you, that now that you understand JavaScript, you should look at somebody's code and understand what's happening. I'm going to walk you through line by line, and just so you have that comfortability, but as you get better and better, you should be able to see what's happening, right? You've like entered the matrix. Cool. First thing is, I'm going to have a global variable that just is an empty array. It's all the Pokemon. So far, so good? I grab 3 things from the DOM. You know how to grab things, right? What 3 things am I grabbing? Search input and the form. Right? I have something called create form. Let's not get to that right now. And then I have something called a function that just fetches Pokemon. All it does is it runs my fetch. It's a get. But as we discussed earlier in the last lecture, do I need to write this? No. What you'll see is this very sexy arrow function here. Right here. But I can very easily write it like this and then get rid of the arrow. Cool? So as a review from this morning, I have a fetch. It gets my data. I can check to see what this data is by going to this URL, because it's just a regular old get, right? And I see all of my Pokemon. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of data. Cool. So I'm going to grab all of this, and then I'm going to what? Parse the JSON with that response. Whatever comes back, I'm going to parse the JSON. And I return so that this then gets what? What is this data right here? That's right, the return value of this then, which should be this response.json, parse JSON, right? Absolutely. So this data is parse JSON. What I'm doing is this all Pokemon. We learned about lexical scoping. In this function, do I have access to all Pokemon? Yes, I do, right? Because every function can look outside the scope chain. So what am I doing here on line 13? Right. So now this empty array is going to be overwritten by this data, which should be all of my Pokemon, right? As I look here, all of my Pokemon. And then I run a function called show all Pokemon with every single Pokemon, this huge Pokemon array. So what is show all Pokemon? Well, let's take a look. Actually, I don't need this. We're going to do this together. Show all Pokemon. It takes in this Pokemon's object, right? So like this data is what? It's like the parse JSON of all the Pokemon, right? So this show all Pokemon is going to take all the Pokemon, and I'm going to take the container, the Pokemon container, change the inner HTML to all the Pokemon. All I'm doing here is I'm mapping through it, and I'm running, it looks like another function, this callback that we talked about. Because map, for each, filter, find, they take a callback. Why do I do this dot join? Do you know? Okay, very good. Gets rid of the commas, right? So what does render single Pokemon do? Let's take a look. All it does is it's a one-for-one transformation. I have a block of Pokemon data, and I return a block of string, HTML string, right? So what I'm doing is I'm taking this one Pokemon object, and I'm taking it, I'm just making it into HTML string. So if I do that for every single one, the inner HTML will now be all 150 Pokemon that looks like HTML. Right? So, I mean, let's get a quick refresher on how map works. All right? You've seen this? So I have an array 1, 2, 3, and I run .map. And map takes a, right? It needs some sort of action. So it's a function. And I'm going to be getting what here? Each one of these elements, right? Element. Cool. So I can simply, what, take the element, and I can, what, add 1. Why is it coming back as undefined? Cool. It's a one-for-one transformation. So whatever I do to this element, it will happen. So if I take a block of 40 things in this object, and all I say is, I don't know, return 7, it's just, cool, man, now you're 7. So everything else in that map, it's a one-for-one transformation. Everything else is gone. Cool? So far, so good? All right. So, boop, boop, boop. Oop.
So, you're giving it the argument of Pokemon, but what you returned was data. So, where do you get, where's Pokemons defined?
Pokemons is not defined anywhere. It is a placeholder. It's an argument, and I'm going to iterate through that argument. When I call and invoke show all Pokemons, I'm passing in that massive array of data. So you can think of, in this function, in the invocation, Pokemons, in this case, would be all the data. Awesome. You guys got through the event listener, right? You learned about event delegation. So if I click and the tag name says image, I'm going to find that Pokemon, return the Pokemon's ID. If it's front, I'm going to make it back. Otherwise, make it front. So I can create this functionality here. Boop, 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 boop. Cool? Great. Any questions on that? This right here is just like the change of input, so I can listen for it in that search functionality. That is the entire application. Are there any questions as to how this is running?
Sorry, in the function above that one, the find.
Yeah?
How does it know what Pokemon to find? Like all Pokemon don't find friends.
This one?
Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
I'm confused about the function Pokemon Online 28.
That's what you click on the Pokemon image. So you click on the image and the ID of the object is associated with that image and returns. So that's
Yes, find accepts a callback, right? This is just fancy arrow syntax. All right, so this is just a function that's taking in a Pokemon. It will only return the ID if it's equal to the event.target.dataset.id. Yeah. Correct. E.target would be whatever I actually clicked from that image.
I super recommend reading the MDM docs for find, because it works different from like Ruby find by. So like, don't think of it as find by. It's a totally different thing that works in a different way in JavaScript.
Yep. Your question is, what is this Pokemon right now, right? It's kind of like nebulous. We have never defined a Pokemon variable. But remember, find, for each map filter, takes a callback, right? So this you can think of as function Pokemon. And so what this is doing is it's going to iterate through everything in Pokemon, and the first Pokemon is going to be Pokemon.id. Does that equal my dataset.id? No. Great. Second Pokemon. Is that ID equal to my target.dataset.id? It's going to keep going until it finds one. And if it doesn't, it will return undefined. Cool? So callbacks are important. All right. So now that we understand this application, the feature set that we would like to build is going to be, I want to put something in here, right? Like Pokemon, and I'm going to have a URL to a front image and a URL to a back image. And when I hit create that Pokemon, what I would like to see is that Pokemon added to my Pokemon array, like here at the new column. Cool?
Is this specing it, or is this actually we're learning to persist data here?
Right now, you're learning to persist data. Yeah? Persist. Cool. So what's some things that we need? We have to think through this because procedurally, you have to understand why you're doing something and how you're going to go about doing it. What is some information that I need? When I hit this create that Pokemon, what do you think happens? Let's do this. You remember this, this field, this form? So far, so good? If I hit submit, what are you expecting to happen? You're expecting a post to where? Index.html. Do I have some sort of like controller action or whatever to kind of handle that? No, I don't have like my Rails set up yet. So what happens when I actually submit it? It's going to post to index.html. I happen to be on index.html, but let's just say I changed it to not index.html. Cool? If I were to submit, what do you think would happen? It will try to post to something called not index. And I don't have that file. It doesn't exist. So naturally that would make sense. So this post, all right, will trigger a brand new post request and ultimately refresh the page, so to speak. That is the default action of this so far, right? What are some of the things that we need to create this Pokemon? What do we have here? We have form fields, right? In this like perfect world, I want to create this Pokemon. I need the data from these form fields. Do you know how to grab the data from a field? Cool, let's try it right here. Ready? Let's try Seabass, as he likes to be called. Does anyone call him that? Sebastian. Cool. So I can see that this input has an ID of new Pokemon name, new Poke name. Did I lose anybody? I lost you, or? Cool. How can I do this? How can I grab the input field? Okay, cool. And what's the element again? Is this good? I need this in string, right? Cool. Is this what I want? Wow, look at that highlighting. Amazing. I can call .value on this, and it will tell me what the value of this is. It's pretty good, right? So, can I grab the elements, grab the inputs of all three of these? Okay, cool. Do I need to do that? So let's think through procedurally what would happen here. So first step is grab all the inputs from the form. Right? If I want to create a new Pokemon, I want to be able to grab all the inputs. That just makes sense because what am I going to be creating this Pokemon with? What data? Right, the stuff from the input field, right? So the second thing is I need to what? All right, so I need to grab all the inputs, right, and save it into like a variable or something. Cool. The second thing I need to do is how can I control when somebody submits a form? How can I possibly handle the event of submitting a form? How can I be aware of it? Okay. So listen to the blank of the form. Which one is it? All right. I need to listen to see when that form submits. So far, so good. And then 3, what do I need to do? Do I like this post request happening in HTML? Do I like that full page refresh? No, I need to stop the form from doing that full page refresh nonsense. Cool? So far, so good. And then I need to finally somehow send the data I just grabbed, right? Step 1. And send it to the server to create. I mean, that's like the steps. You should know how to do at least the first 2. So let's take a look. Ready? How can I grab all the inputs and save it into a variable? Well, I know I can do this, and that's going to just give me the Poke name. Right? So can I, right here, grab all the inputs, right? Const, and that is going to be new Poke name is equal to this value. All right? And then I need what? New Pokemon like front, and then new Pokemon back. And are these the correct IDs? So what are they? Wow, new Poke front sprite. That is named appropriately. Oop. And naturally, I think it's new Poke back sprite. Oops. Bloop. Cool. Is that good? Yeah. Should I do anything else before I move on? Huh? I could probably test it, right? So I got Seabass, I can do this. I can just also do like that back though. Cool. And then in my console, if I simply paste these in, I can do new Poke name, new Poke back, sorry, new Poke name, and then new Poke front. Whoops. Cool. And so I've gotten them successfully. I gotta stop and test every step of the way. What's the next thing? How do I listen for this submit? Great. I'm just going to add event listener to what? Just like to form over here. Stop the madness. All right. First, I need to grab that form. How do I grab the form? All right. So I need to do the same thing I did for the other ones, right? So I have a new Poke form, and that equals what? Let's see how we can grab this bad boy. Cool. Does it have an ID or anything unique for me to grab? Cool. Perf. Document.get element. So we will transition away from get element.id. Eventually, we'll start using query selector. Cool. But for now, I mean, if you are more comfortable with get element by ID, all the way. Do I just add event listener, what, like to like new Poke form? How do I do this? Dot add event listener, right? And how does add event listener work?
First argument is the event it's listening for, so here's click.
Oh, click.
And then the second thing is whatever you want it to do.
So what do I want it to do? How do I tell JavaScript to do something? I give it a fun function. Cool. So far, so good.
Why don't you put the event listener on the submit button itself?
Oh, got it. That's a good question. The question is, why do I listen for the submission of this entire form versus listening for the click of this like submit button, right? Huh? Is that the question?
Oh no, I was saying like the data might be empty, but it would still.
Well, I just want to know first, is that the question? Okay. Does anyone have an answer?
Is that just so like it's just good practice that later on if you wanted to add another button, you wouldn't have to add a new event listener, you would just add another condition?
That is also true, but that's not why we listen for the form.
Yeah, it's public because it's going to like everything that happens on that form will bubble up to the form, and so we can collect all that data by listening to the form. If you listen to the button, the submit action itself, you're not going to be able to collect that other data in this form.
100% correct, right? I'm listening for the submission of the form because the form knows about all of its inputs. Does this button know about its sibling inputs? No. Also, I submit forms, I do not submit buttons. Right? Just in English, does that make sense to you, right? Like, hey, great, I'm going to go ahead and submit that button. You're like, I don't know what that means. I'm going to submit a form. Cool. Using the submit button. But that is a very good question. Comes up all the time. Yeah.
Hypothetically though, like if you just wanted to use the submit button, you could just target forms that you wanted to use for whatever. Like you could just target them as document.get element by my form, like the value or whatever. Like you could get it, you wouldn't have to necessarily use the bubbling if you just targeted the forms, right?
The question is, can you listen for the submit on the button?
So let's just say I have a blank page. And
Cool.
It's just got 2 empty inputs and a
Cool.
button, and they're not associated in any way.
Yeah.
And I create an event listener on that button, and I click it. And when I click it, I tell JavaScript to go to this spot on the page.
Got it.
And grab that value.
So the question is, can I listen for just this button click, and then in that, grab the forms from everything else and then process the data? Technically correct, but then you would have to do like click, and then it becomes really sketch in terms of like. Yes, and no. 100% correct. However, there have been so many. I should stop recording. So, what I want to do is I want to grab that form and I want to listen for the submit. What's the first thing I want to do? What's the first thing I want to do? Right. So here's what happens if I do not stop that full refresh page nonsense. Let me try just console logging, right? Clicked the submit button. Now we're okay. Could have been terrible. Boop, 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 boop. Huh, interesting. Let's check that log real quick. Did you see it? It came up. Bloop, bloop, bloop. It's there. But then it goes away because of that full page refetch nonsense. Oh, man. I've been lecturing for like 3.5 hours, so I'm tired. You want to stop that. So, what do we know about this event listener, and what does it pass in as an argument to this function? The event, right? I'm going to use E because I'm lazy, but it's the event. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to take that event, and what is the regular, normal action of this submit? It's a post, and that does that full page refresh. I want to prevent the default, and that is a function I must evoke. So if I were, in fact, to do that, what I should see is it no longer does this full page refresh nonsense. Cool? So the next thing is, now that we did that, all right, and we want to send the data that I just grabbed to the server. How do I do that? How do we know how to make these requests in JavaScript? All right, so I can fetch. And where do I want to fetch to? What URL? Right, so we know RESTful routing says that if I make a post to Pokemon, I should hit the create action. Does that sound familiar? Cool. How do I hit the create action? Is it a get? Remember I told you about this little thing? This little monster over here? What is this going to be? Post action, right? What else do we have here? We need to tell it what we're posting. If you are having trouble writing your fetch, and I guarantee you will, you have a fetch here, and then I told you what to add on to look it up. MDN, right? Otherwise, I'm gonna get like a dog or something, like playing fetch, just wild. Cool, concepts and usage, great. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, wait. Concepts and usage, where am I? Oh, using fetch? Where is it? Using fetch. Smart. Cool. This looks like exactly what we went over this morning. Right? I'm just going to parse some JSON, and then I'm going to like look at it. Cool? Or stringify, it doesn't matter. However, it looks like the fetch, and I said that it takes additional arguments. Inside this entire object, I can pass in more key value pairs. So let us make our fetch look like that. Cool? So, sorry. Great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the curly brackets, as you can see right here. Right. right here. I'm going to open the curly brackets, and I'm going to hit boop, return. I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to add a comma. Meaning that the second argument is going to be a collection of key value pairs that I'm going to send over. So I have a method post, got it. Mode cores. Just going to briefly go over what these are and then tell you what's kind of important. So we have mode cores, right? This is cross origin request. I forget what S stands for. You know, that's fine. What it really means is when you do your fetch requests, are you coming from a different origin? Does that make sense, everybody? It does? Man, I had no idea what that meant at the time. I'm on what origin right now? Localhost 3000, right? Does it make sense that localhost 3000 can make fetch requests to localhost 3000? Can I and should I be able to make fetch requests to localhost 3000 from the developer.mozilla.org? Only if localhost says it's okay. I should automatically block any requests coming from a different origin. Cool? So this simply tells me what sort of cores access I have. Cache, we'll get into that much, much later, but you're not saving any data into your cache, or you're not pulling from the cache. Credentials, you'll learn more when you do auth in mod 4. Because do you remember in mod 2 when we had to send in like a username and password and then it became password digest? Okay, there are more things to do when talking about sessions and something called JWT, where you will have a particular token that authenticates you. Headers, this is very important. What headers is, and we'll write it right here, headers, cool? This tells me two things. The first thing is when I send data, cool? When I send data, what is the type of data I'm about to send? Here, I'm going to send application JSON. This you will just essentially have to memorize or reference. Cool? This is common things that will trip you up. Lowercase c, not putting this in a string. Oops. That. Forgetting the dash. Not capitalizing this T. This has to be written exactly in this way.
For our sake, we're always going to be sending JSON.
For our sake, for your sake, and for what you will do for essentially 99% of your time here, you will almost always be sending JSON. If you're choosing not to send JSON, see us and we'll help you out. These are what are known as MIME types. I'll show you. MIME types, and what do I add? Cool. What? Otherwise, yeah, you'll get like a little MIME, right? Cool. What it stands for is a multi-purpose internet mail extension. Go ahead and ignore mail. But think of mail as sort of like sending and receiving. And that's kind of where that came from. You can send plain text, you can send HTML, you can send JavaScript, CSS. You can send images, audio files, and video through the internet. All right? That makes sense though. You ever like upload a profile picture to like Facebook or something? What did you send over? Did you send JSON over? No, you sent like a PNG or a JPEG or something like. You sent a picture file over the internet. It probably sent some sort of post request or patch request with what? Like image JPEG or image PNG based on what you sent. Does that make sense? Cool. The next thing is going to be when we post, what do we normally get back? We get something like, hey, it was created, or it failed to create, something like that, right? So we need to be able to accept data back from the server. It's one thing to tell the server, hey, it's coming in hot, it's going to be JSON. And then it needs another thing to be like, what kind of data am I sending back? Am I getting back from the server? So I need to accept certain types of data. And here, It's just going to be the same thing. We're going to accept JSON. And this will come into play very soon, especially because look at this .then. This .then. What do we do with the response? It came in as JSON, so we had to parse it. So we're telling the server, hey, I will accept JSON back as a response. Cool. What's next in here? We have a redirect. We don't need to do that. Or a refer. But what is this body JSON stringify data? Body data type must match content type header. Okay? So what this is saying is inside here, outside my headers, right? Outside my headers, I have another comma. And I have a body. The body is going to be what the actual payload is that you will send across through the interwebs, the actual data. We told the server, hey, you're getting JSON. So I must send JSON. So whatever data I have to stringify it into JSON. So I will first take JSON.stringify, and then I will send over what is affectionately like my data. It's weird though, right? How do I send over the data? I don't know what this data object looks like, or if it's an array or just a string. What do you think this is? A blob?
Like when it's like images, all that random data type.
Okay.
The object we want to create, like
We
the name and the associated value.
right.
Front, back image and associated.
Absolutely. So if you remember back in Mod 2, the second you submit your forms, what do you do when you check the binding.py or the bybug in the create? Check the params, right? And how do the params come through? As a hash, as a key value pair, right? But how are we going to send it over? What does the server want? Well, let's think. Inside Rails, what did we do? We did something like Pokemon.create, right? And then we did something like poke params or whatever, right? But what was Pokemon params? It was just like a hash of what? Like the name, and then it was like something, comma, and then front sprite, something, comma. That's how it came through on the params for Rails, if you can imagine how the form is submitting. Rails did a lot of that auto magic for you. Here we'll have to manually tell the format how it's going to go through. So what do we have? We have this Pokemon object, right? Let's take a look at a specific type of Pokemon. So like 3. I don't know. I don't have 3. What is the ID of this? 7. Starts at 7 because I deleted the rest. Great. This is the show page, right? I'm going to create one type of Pokemon. What do I have here? What did I create my inputs with? A name, right? It's looking for a name. I could see that in the way that the data structure is coming through. So I have name, and I can hard code that to CBAS. I can send over CBAS if I wanted to. What else does it want? Well, let's see. Abilities, moves. I'm not really logging any of this, right? I have sprites here. So naturally, it wants sprites. But how does it want it? In another nested object. So another nested object. And I have a front and a back. You can see that right there. When you stringify, everything becomes string. Cool? And then I can hard code some values in here. Cool? So let's do that. Let's, what kind of Pokemon do you want to make?
Seabass.
Okay. Seabass. Very good. Oh, wow. Nice. All right, let's do that. Let's go from this. Let's do Barramundi. All right, copy image address. Cool. And then we're going to change. Whoa. Ah, golly. All right, let's find it. And let's copy image address here for back. God, that's gross. That's so gross. Do you think that's going to work? Oh, we'll find out. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I just added like a couple hundred lines of code. Like, no big deal, like a boss. So let's actually see what's going on here. We wrote a lot of code. Oh, no. I'm in JavaScript hell. What is this? Index 40? Oh, man, where is it? All right, I'm just going to get rid of these for now. What is this? Oh, did I not open this body? Where does this end? Cool. Sorry. This whole thing is an object, right? So I need to open it here and then close it here. Cool. Sweet. Did you see where I made that mistake? Does that make sense? Like the whole thing is one object. I just forgot to open it. Got carried away trying to teach you how to send the data. Sweet. So let's bring that back. Oh, man. Embarrassing. Let's do this. Image address. Oh, terrible. Oh, yeah? This one? Oh, right click? Oh, dang, my bad. Open a new tab.
Well, if you right click the image, let's open image in new tab, and then you just get whatever the actual image URL is.
Open image in new tab. Interesting.
And I got a little baby URL.
Wow. Powerful. Great. Let's get rid of this junk. Yo, dang. All right. Wow. That was interesting. Cool. Cool. All right. Let's do that. See how fast you can learn. Cool. And then this would be the front. Cool? So, quick review. When I submit the form, I log something stupid. I prevent the default, and then I run a post request. I let it know what's coming in and what I'm going to accept and what the payload is of what I can expect to create into the server. Let's do that. Let's take a look at, remember, these are all the Pokemon, and I should be able to see after I submitted a new Pokemon at the bottom here, right? Let's take a look. When I were to, if I were to add something like, I don't know, CB, and here's a front image, like front, and here's some back image. Why is it not important what I put in here? Because I've hard-coded it just to test it first, right? I'm not actually using the inputs. So let me create that Pokemon. My button clicked. Did anything happen on the page? I did not update the DOM. So let's take a look at the database, though. There it is, Seabass. Right? With an ID, and the front and back are empty strings. Interesting. That's not right. But either way, it created. I mean, I'm gonna look into like why that happened just now, but cool. Huh? I'm trying to steal from Google. Cool. And I created it in the database. I didn't actually do anything to the DOM yet. Does that make sense? Cool. Yo, do you know what happened here? It should have saved that data. Oh, I'm so dumb. Yeah, this is. I think it's nested. I don't think that's correct. We'll find out. Oops. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Cool. Ready? Charizard. A. Okay. Fresh. Yeah, it's being a punk. It wanted it in a string, specifically.
So you wanted to put something like that in a string and it's like a land name. Like how come sprites doesn't need to
It's on the top level of the object. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So what happens now? Ready? Inside this body, you should get this like package where you see how I can like follow this line here. This is where the fetch starts, and I can see right here is where the fetch ends. Cool. Why is this useful to me? Well, then I can just quick old dot then to see what happens. I'm going to get some sort of response. All right, let me write it out. Old function. I'm going to get some sort of response object. We know that. And then what do I do with the response? Is this okay? Stop the madness. Stop the madness. Stop the madness. Cool? You're going to forget it all the time. I do it all the time. But I want to just iterate. Cool. Then, I can take another function. Bloop, bloop. Now it's parsed. But what do I know that this should be? What did I just create?
We've already have a function that does this, right? It's like taking the parse data and like push it to the DOM.
You talking about this?
No.
I do. Yeah, I have that. I'm going to use that here in a second. Very smart. Cool. But now I'm just testing for a second. And that is, what is this parse data actually? What did I just create? I created like a Pokemon, right? So instead of like writing always like data, then parse data, you should know what's coming back because you're the full stack developer. You built this. Oh, bare hands. So this should be some sort of Pokemon object. Cool. Boop, boop. And now, oh no. Almost got stuck in JavaScript hell. I can console log the return value, which I'm sure should be some sort of Pokemon. So let me do that. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Cool. And there it is. Name Seabass, sprites, front and back. Right? Because, let's think about it. I sent over JSON, right? I stringified this JSON that I sent over. After the promise was resolved, it hit the database, hit that create, and came back with some sort of response. I take the response, and I parse in JSON because I'm telling the server I'm expecting and accepting JSON. And then, after it's been parsed, I know that when I hit this post to Pokemons, it's creating something, right? The RESTful route. So I just logged it. I could have put anything in here, but I just logged my Pokemon because I knew that that's what was going to come up. Does everyone need like a 5-minute break? Seems like you're kind of, it's a lot to take in. Great, take like a 5-minute breather. So here I'm hard coding. And that's not a great sort of experience, right? No matter what I put in the form, you're always going to be Seabass. That's kind of bad. So what did we do before? We grabbed those inputs. Notice how I grabbed the inputs before the submit. Think about it. If I were to say, what is new poke, and then I click submit, what will this be? This will always be blank. Because when the page loads, and then I go, great, grab this value, and then I hit submit, this was empty at the time of page load. So how can I make it so that it's not? Right, I can wait until the user submits, then I can grab those values. Does that make sense? So let me do that. In the submit, I'm going to grab those values. I can prove it by going to see what is the new poke name, comma, new poke front, and then what is the new poke back, right? So when I first submit the form, I should console log all of these. Cool. What else can I do here? Probably use those variables, right? What is the new Poke name? I'm going to drop it right here. Is that right? Why? Are you sure?
Oh, it's gonna string apply, right?
Smart. I mean, kind of, yeah. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at what happens here. Cool. Yeah? So let's make a new Pokemon. You ever hate when this happens? I can't. Sorry, it's embarrassing. Happens to all of us. So, cool. What is the name for this? What kind of Pokemon do you want to make? Great. And what do I look like? What is my front image? Oh my god. Let's go to Flavor Town. Oh yeah. Oh yes. This is it. This is the winner right here, man. Let's go to Flavor Town. What? Wow. Oh my lord. Yo, Flavor Savior. Yes. All right. No, it's okay. Sometimes you got to learn about Flavor Town. You know. I'm surprised. Wait, did Mike not do any Flavor Town lectures in Mod 2? Wow, Mod 2 has changed. I take you to Flavor Town every lecture. Oh man, it's different now. Cool. So when I hit this, I should expect that the name should be interpolated as well as the front and back. Cool. Great. As promised, the console log logs my name, and then the first image, and then this gross second image. Cool. God, this 12,800 more. Forget that. Cool. Just know that it's something. Cool. Something exists. Awesome. Remember, did we do anything to the DOM? Should I see anything here?
Well, we did is we passed it. There's already a function in here that does stuff on page load, and I think you refreshed. So it's grabbing from the database.
100%. So what you don't see is Flavor Town. What you do see are these Chilean sea basses, right? Because when I first made this, remember the string didn't come through and the image didn't come through, but these did. So on refresh, that's right. On refresh, it refetched the Pokemon data and appended it to the page. But what you don't see is the Flavor Town one, right? So how can we then, after it comes back, add it to the page? So there's two schools of thought here. Inside the .then, right, means that I have, so inside the .then means I have resolved the promise and therefore returned some data. Cool? Outside the .then, but still within the confines of this fetch. All right, let's see, where does this fetch end? Where is this thing? Where's the partner? This one? No, this one. Which one? This one? This one revolves this one. Oh, right, this one. All right. So inside here, I can, inside the submit, outside the fetch, right here, I can update the DOM, or I can do it inside, meaning I have the data that I need to update the DOM. I have a name and I have a front and back image. That's all I really need to update the DOM. I could do it the second someone clicks this, or I could do it after when someone clicks it and the database says it got saved successfully. Does that make sense? Meaning, I do not have to officially wait for the server to resolve the promise and say, hey, you successfully created CBAS in your database. Go ahead and update the DOM. I don't have to wait for that. So there's two schools of thought. The first one is inside the .then. If I'm saying I don't trust the fact that it will be 100% guaranteed that it'll hit the database, I can render it here inside the .then. That is known as pessimistic rendering. Pessimistic? Oh, wow. Pessimistic rendering. And the name suits. It's just saying, hey, look, I don't trust this. If this fetch goes through and it's good, then I'll update the DOM. However, this says, hey, the second it submits, very likely it'll hit the database, probably create it, no big deal. Let's just update the DOM and show the user something immediately. That sounds very So, do you feel comfortable in the difference between optimistic rendering and pessimistic rendering? Now the question becomes, well, which one do I use? Well, great question. Whatever one you want. But there are factors to consider. So for example, if I'm on Instagram, right, and I'm just like hearting left and right, like, yeah, great, super like, money, awesome, and I'm just like double tapping till my finger comes off, it is very likely that, one, I'm probably not going to double check to see if that went through. Two, the fact that I'm sending a like has very little consequence in the long run. I want that user, I'm valuing the user experience more than I'm valuing whether or not it hit the database, right? Because let me ask you this. If you double click, right, or you hit like on something, do you like waiting 2 to 3 seconds to be like, hey, confirmed you liked it? No. You'd rather double click and immediately see heart. Right? And so the user experience is better if there's immediate feedback. Something like a like button, I would definitely render optimistically. Now, if I'm creating a new user in my database, do I want to render that user optimistically? Think about the consequences to that. If I hit create a new user, and then it renders a profile page, and then I find out later that I never got saved in the database, I'm going to be like, what? No, I created a user. I saw it. What do you mean I don't exist in the database? That would be crazy. Something like creating a user, I would 100% render pessimistically.
What about validation? Like when we did that kind of stuff in Rails, you may validate the name or something like that.
Absolutely.
So would you be able, you couldn't validate it if you did it out of submit, you can only validate it if it is.
That is correct. So again, why and what you choose to render optimistically or pessimistically will be on you, and you have to weigh the risk and the user experience. Optimistic will be much faster, but there is no guarantee it's saved. Pessimistic is slower, but there's a guarantee it hit the database.
I feel like that's different than what you bring up.
What? No, pessimistic, I return some data. Inside the .then means I have resolved the promise. Optimistic, I'm just updating the DOM. Optimistic rendering, no guarantee. For no guarantee, database is updated.
Alright, so if we do it in the then function, we're saying that it hits the database first.
100%. Because the then is saying the response came back. Otherwise, the promise could get rejected, and then I don't render anything.
That wasn't clear to me initially.
Okay.
I had it back.
Oh, no, you're totally good. Thank you for that clarification, and I'm glad you asked.
Are they mutually exclusive? Like, you know when you click, I don't know, a new profile, and it might show you like something that's blank, that's like kind of loading or something. Like,
Yes. Yeah, you can use them together. I'm just trying my best to explain the difference, and that in fact the choice is yours as to which one you choose to do, and you have to think as to why I would do them. Right? It's like a hint on the code challenge. You should probably render pessimistically because you want to make sure it works before you like update anything. Otherwise, you're like, oh yeah, it totally works because the DOM got updated, and then you've done fooled yourself because it didn't actually update. You know what I'm saying? Cool? Again, a choice. So, any questions on pessimistic and optimistic, where you would write it, and just some pros and cons as to why you would do one or the other? Like a quick thumbs up. I know this lecture's running a little bit long. Awesome. So, let's go update the DOM, right? Great. How do I do that? I know I have a function that takes all of my Pokemon, where is it? And it shows them all with some sort of data. Can I run that function again? I can. The problem is I added something to this data. Does the variable know I added it? Does all Pokemon know right now that there is a new Flavor Town Pokemon inside here? No. So I can take this Pokemon and I can push in the new Pokemon. Oops, sorry, it allows. Ugh. So, a couple things to note, right? And that is, number one, you want to update the database. Number two, update the DOM. And number three, you want to make sure you update any local variables so that your data is always in sync. So now that I have this brand new Pokemon and it's pushed in there, if I call this method, it will in fact re-render the entire container with that new Pokemon. Does that make sense? So, yeah?
So it's better than pushing a new Pokemon into that all Pokemon and then just separately rendering using the every single Pokemon function.
Say it one more time. Sorry, your friend over here is being really rude.
Pushes the new Pokemon into the all Pokemon object.
Yeah.
And then runs the show all Pokemon on that slightly larger all Pokemon.
Yeah. Now it has like a +1 object.
Yeah. Is that better than still running that first line all Pokemon push Pokemon and then also doing the render single Pokemon on this new Pokemon?
You're saying, do I do this versus render single Pokemon?
Yeah, for the new Pokemon.
So what render single Pokemon will do is it will transform it into HTML. So let's take a look at show all Pokemon. Show all Pokemon takes everything I passed in and actually transforms every single thing.
Right.
If I run it on that one, oh, I see what you're saying. So instead of doing this, you want to do render single Pokemon, passing in the Pokemon object, and then adding that to the container.
Right.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, 100%. Like the way you think. So the point is, you can do this so many different ways. Right? I can do exactly what he said, and that is if I update this, I can transform it into a string, and then I can take the Pokemon container .inner HTML and then add it on. Right? Like just add it right on there. I could do that. Let's do that. Cool. Who wants to be a Pokemon? Okay, great. Great. You know what I'm going to look for. Cats. Oh, yeah. Wow. Obviously. Oh, which one looks like Mike Chang? This one. That's Mike Chang. If I saw one. Copy image address. We're just going to mess up our database and copy the 40 million character one. Cool. What does the back of Mike Cheng look like?
You're not crazy.
Which one?
You're right.
This one?
Cat eating a banana. That's amazing.
Nah, we're not gonna do that one. Cool. Great. So if I hit create Pokemon, I should. There he is, Mike Chang! Powerful Mike Chang. Wow. Power. Yeah, okay, so the CSS is not great, but that's somebody else's problem. It's probably yours in the future, right? But great, and that's really about it. So when you post, remember, update the database, right? And how do you update the database? This is updating the database, the post request. Update the DOM any way you want, either this way, or other unique ways by creating an element, changing the inner HTML of the image, or changing the source of the image, and then using the data that we grab from here, and simply append child to the container. There are so many ways to do it. No real way is wrong, but I will suggest if you do it one way, do it that way everywhere in your app for consistency. That is about the only real piece of advice in terms of like how you should be updating the DOM. And then updating all your local variables.
How come we don't have a DOM content loaded?
Which one? Here?
Oh, wait, never mind. I thought you were at the top of the code earlier.
Oh, no. Cool. All right, if there are no other questions, that's all I got for you today. Thanks.